All right, welcome everybody. I just want to make sure that we are live. Um, Welcome to this month's webinar. I know I've been a few months since I've done one, but we are going to, sorry, 1 second. I didn't take my own advice. Today, rather than trying to sell you a product and show you a product, we're going to try and bring you some value. I know I'm super excited to learn about where I can best spend my money in computing from Chris Touchberry of Top Flight Computer. So I'm not going to talk too much at the beginning of this. We're going to go ahead and bring him on. He'll tell you a little bit about Top Flight, and then we'll go into different parts of the computing and how it affects reality capture software. So go ahead, Chris.
Hey, Mac. Thanks for having me here. So I'm Top Flight Computers. We design purpose-built desktop, laptop, rack mount systems, predominantly for reality capture, a couple other workloads, but mostly doing reality capture the past 4 years. I think you're still.
So what led you guys into kind of tackling the reality capture realm as opposed to like gaming and everything else?
Yeah, well, so we started in gaming. The first 4 or 5 years was mostly that, and then once we really got into the B2B space in the workstation world, I made some friends on LinkedIn. Just found this guy that had the title of metrology engineer, and I was like, "The hell is that? Sounds super cool." I have no idea what you do, but that sounds super cool. And so we became pretty good friends. And then his company eventually bought a computer, about a $40,000 computer. So then that big win led to more wins, and it just kind of went from there. And now that's most of what we do. So that's pretty cool.
And then how do you approach designing from the ground up a computer for reality capture?
So we really have to know all the software that's being used, the scanner that's being used, whether it's aerial, whether it's land-based, what the projects can be, what they are now, what they may be in the future, to as much as you can, because sometimes the software and the scanner is locked into a certain processor, into a certain CPU. And if you have the wrong processor, CPU, it won't work at all, or it'll run horribly bad. These kinds of builds are being run at almost 100% capacity for extended periods of time, not like a gaming PC where you fire it up for 4 hours a day and then it cools off at night, and then you do some email on it and it's chill, and then you might play a game for an hour. No, these things run flat out all the time. So we have to make sure that the system is built to go hard and fast.
All right. And then one more just about your company and how you guys do. What do you guys see? You guys see more AEC, more VFX people, more surveyors? Who are your main customer base?
Mostly the AEC folks. Well, E and C, not so much architects. A lot of civil engineering, a lot of construction, a lot of surveying, some visual effects, some game dev, but heavily civil engineering, surveying. Utilities is a big one. Not so much in the number of customers, but in the what they need and what they buy.
Nice. All right, and then let's get into some of the hardware selection. What can you tell me about CPUs and how important are they to the reality capture workflow?
They are the main show. CPUs it depends entirely on what the software is, how much RAM you're going to need or how much RAM you have now. If you don't anticipate yourself ever needing more than 256 of RAM, then you're fine with Core Ultra. If you ever anticipate needing more than that, then you really need to be looking at a Threadripper Pro, or Xeon, simply because Core Ultra cannot go past 256, at least for now. Whereas the Threadripper goes up to 1 terabyte, Threadripper Pro goes up to 2 terabytes, and conceptually Xeon goes up to 4 terabytes. And then it really depends. Once you determine that, we need to know the software, because some software plays better with AMD, some software plays better with Intel, and if there's a mix, then we have to figure out which one is more of a priority, or if there's anything that we can do to the CPU to make it overcome the weakness in the other software. Ryzen is also a great processor, but there is an issue when you fully load the memory controller with 4 DIMMs, and then the memory frequency drops by like half. So then the performance of the Ryzen processor drops heavily. So 4 DIMMs is bad on Ryzen.
All right, so that you talked a little bit about NVIDIA and AMD, and so I know like Leica software is built around CUDA, so you kind of need to have that if you're in a Leica environment. But how important is the GPU compared to the CPU? Or if I was to invest my money in one of the two, which one should I upgrade first?
I would go with the CPU first. I would focus on that first in the build. As far as the GPU goes, really one video card is going to be fine. I would get the single best one that you can with the most VRAM that you can. VRAM a little more so than the core count. If you run out of VRAM and you start to use your RAM as VRAM, which sucks, then your model starts to go like that, and it's bad. But I would focus mostly on the CPU and the board, what the board can handle. Yeah.
Can you expand on that? What the board can handle?
As far as RAM storage, if there's getting kind of into it, there's if you're doing a build with Xeon, a Xeon 2500, there's a motherboard by Asus that only has 2 slots for storage, for M2 storage. So if you were using 8 terabyte drives, you can only have 16 terabytes on board, which seems like a lot, but that could go away very fast. There's a board by ASRock that has 4 slots for drives, so you can do 32 terabytes, which is better. You
and are those workstations motherboards, or are they consumer? Okay, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are probably at least $500 per. The Asus costs more because it's better for overclocking. The ASRock can't really overclock. It's fine. you can always add in storage. They make these add-in cards that you can add in 2, 4, or 8 M2 drives, and you just add it into the PCI slot, and it just takes up the one slot. So then you could add in 64 terabytes into one PCI slot. So that's cool.
Yeah. So you mentioned RAM a couple of times. What's the minimum you would put in a reality capture computer for RAM?
I'd really say minimum is 128. We can do 64 to save some money. But what happens frequently is that people buy a new computer and then they take their business or they take their job from level 1 to level 100. And then the computer's just not built for that. It might be built for level 20, but it's not built for level 100. So I would say at least 128.
Okay. Yeah. And then I'm going to pause real quick and just remind everybody, if you want to ask a question yourself, feel free to post a comment, and we'll share it on the screen, and Chris will answer it. I forgot to mention that at the beginning, so sorry about that. So you've mentioned storage a few times too. You just mentioned a bunch of M2. Now, I upgraded a computer quite a bit back in the day, and honestly, the biggest bang I saw for my buck back then was switching to the fastest read and write times on an M2. Is that still the case? Do you recommend mostly M2s, or do you want some SATA drives too? Or
we do largely M2, mostly from a cost perspective. The NVMe M2 Gen 4 at least has almost reached parity with the SATA drives, with the SATA SSDs. So, if it's $20 more to have 10 times faster, why not? Typically start most builds for really anything, and we start with 1 plus 2 terabyte, 1 terabyte for Windows and programs, and then 2 terabyte for whatever. If you put a lot of apps and programs and things on your computer, then we may bump up that 1 terabyte boot drive to a 2 terabyte, because Autodesk loves to have its own cache, and it likes to have its own cache, and sometimes that application cache has to be on the C drive and you can't change it, so then you have to have a bigger C drive. Sometimes we make the data drive a 4 terabyte or an 8 terabyte. Sometimes they want a boot, a project, and an export, or a boot, a project, an export, and a cache. And then it really depends if your software can leverage the faster drive. So there's Gen 4, which goes up to 7 gigabytes a second, one drive. Gen 5 does up to twice that, so 14 gig, almost 15 gig. Some software doesn't care, and it would be fine with just a PCI 3.0 drive. Some software totally cares, and it's CPU, RAM, storage, and then the video card.
So those are your priority list. Video card last. I would not have guessed that.
For reality capture.
Yeah.
I
guess I get most of my advice from gamers on YouTube, right? So of course they want the GPU.
For visual effects and AI, it's totally different.
Okay. And then Gabe, actually, Gabe Keller, a friend of Lidaholics here, he is asking about processing speed over data security. Do you have an opinion on that?
Honestly, no, I don't have an opinion on that. we sell for speed. Security is, if it's a concern, then we will we'll take it into account. I'm trying to think of what we would do. It would really just depend on what they're needing in the build from that sense. We had a customer that was, long story short, was not allowed to use the cloud because what they were working on was highly secure. It was a national security deal. So they weren't allowed to use the cloud. And they didn't want to pay for the secured cloud. Also, if your internet connection is trash, the cloud's not a good idea. Because you can't upload a terabyte if you have a tiny little pipeline. So they had to have some local machines, and they wanted to get their processing done in a reasonable amount of time at a certain quality level. So they had to have a certain kind of machines.
All right. So, and then thank you for that question, Gabe. I know that with some of my reality capture software, it's really taxing my computer and causing overheating issues. And there's nothing more frustrating than it almost finishing its process and then my computer shuts down because it's too hot. There's no doubt that cooling is important. Do you have a preference in what kind of cooling? And I know you showed me some cool stuff for laptops a little bit ago. You want to go into cooling a little bit?
Sure. We're extensively using liquid cooling on the processor. Stuff is just so hot nowadays. You really can't go away from liquid cooling. If it's going to run for 6 hours, 6 days, it's got to run at 100% load for 6 days. It means we have to manage the heat. We're now, well, a couple months ago, we started putting active memory coolers, active fans, and air guides on the VCC memory because we were concerned that the memory was going to be overheating. So just doing everything we can to get the heat out.
Yeah. And are you seeing with higher end components, you're obviously seeing a lot more heat, and that's becoming a bigger issue?
Oh yeah. I mean, if you think about a 3090 RTX 3090 from 2022, I guess when that was, I don't remember when that was. That was 350 watts, and then the 4090 was 450 watt, and now the 5090 is 575 watt.
Wow.
And it's just going up. We just had there's more heat, there's more power. It's just getting worse.
And all this extra wattage, I'm sure you guys have put a lot of thought into power supplies.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys have a favorite of those, favorite wattage, or?
I don't know about a favorite wattage. It's just whatever the customer needs. But we typically start with at least 1,000 watt. Can easily go to 1,200 watt. 1,200 watt is not that much more money. And then 1,500 watt, typically for 5090 builds. Sometimes it's 2 power supplies, not from a redundancy sense, but we just need more watts. Because if you run out of the power it turns off.
Yeah. Like I said, there's nothing worse than that. You lose everything. You mentioned motherboards earlier. And we talked about workstation motherboards. Do you see any advantage to having a dual CPU motherboard?
If you need the compute, yes. Dual CPU boards it's twice as much processor. It's typically more than twice as much RAM. So like Threadripper Pro is eight slots for RAM, so up to 2 terabytes, 8 by 128, so 8 by 256. Epic, not that I would recommend Epic for reality capture. Epic is 2-socket with 12 slots per socket. So it's 24 DIMMs overall. So going from 8 to 24. So Epic can hold 6 terabytes of RAM.
Jesus.
That's like 60 grand.
Yeah. Yeah.
If RAM.
That's crazy. It's all getting up there too in price. So with all these high-end components and managing it all, how do you guys benchmark all this stuff or like test it?
So we're really just testing it at 100% load. We use a combination of Body64 for the CPU and the RAM, and then we use Firmark for the video card, and we just run all of that at 100% for 6 hours. Gets very loud, very hot, but as long as it doesn't overheat or thermal throttle or crash or do something dumb, it's probably fine. Then there's some other tests that we run for the drives just to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Yeah.
And say one of your computers is crashing a lot. What kind of which I know they don't, but what kind of post support and like future proofing you guys provide with your computers?
So they're always welcome to call. Customers are always welcome to call. Our labor is warranted for life. There are the various part warranties from Asus, Intel, NVIDIA, AMD, whatever. If you want more coverage than that, then we do have optional extended warranties. Those aren't purchased a whole lot. But then we also don't have to act on many warranty claims because of the stress testing. So in theory, if it's going to fail, it's going to fail in testing. It's not going to fail in the field, which is what we've seen.
Okay. And what do you see as far as customers' pain points? Why are people coming and upgrading these computers? What are the biggest problems that are currently not being solved?
Most of their pain points, I would say, is that their computer's awful. They went to Best Buy and they bought a $2,000 tower because it was what was there, and they needed a computer for their new drone, and they didn't know any better, which is fine. It totally happens. It is what it is. You don't know what you don't know. So if their laptop is trying to take flight because it's running so hot, the fans are trying to make it take flight, or it's taking weeks to render when it should take days or 1 day or less. Their project timelines are just getting longer and longer, then their customers are mad.
Yeah, it's supposed to make our life faster and easier, right?
Yeah.
Now, what do you see a lot of, like, my misconception with the GPU by following like gamers and stuff like that? Do you see a lot of people coming in with misconceptions about what they need versus what they should get?
Maybe I wouldn't say it's a lot. I would say they know some things, but they don't know about most of it. So luckily they haven't gone down the whole rabbit hole on Linus tech tips. So not a whole lot. Most of my job is spent educating, which is fine.
Do you see any emerging tech like AI really start to affect what your customers are doing or what you're doing, or something you're excited about coming soon?
I'm excited about AI. All of these new tools and new functions in apps to make features. You hit the make feature tool or auto analyze and makes your life easier. It definitely has the potential to mean for more computer sales, because if your computer can't handle the AI automation, you have to not do it, which can take you longer. So I think that also if we can make the software more friendly towards a video card, that'll be helpful. Video cards we've seen in visual effects, in rendering, in AI, just how much faster they are than a processor. We're trying to do a task. The trouble is that coding for the video card is not as easy as a processor. And you're also limited by the VRAM. So you can buy a 96 gig video card for $8,000, or you could buy 96 gigs of RAM for $300. Granted, it's just RAM. You have to buy a processor too, but
yeah, there's obvious cost benefit for going with the RAM and the CPU.
Right.
Yeah. Do you see? Is it about even, or do you sell a lot more towers? Are people pushing more towards mobile and laptops, or?
We do sell mostly towers. We've started selling a little bit more laptops the past 6 months. But we still sell mostly towers. We push towers a little bit harder because they last longer. They're more expandable, or they just straight up are expandable. Laptops are a pain in the butt. I mean, there definitely are more people wanting a laptop because it's mobile, which is a huge plus. But God, they suck.
With the mobile, you see a lot of people pushing towards cloud-based storage and workflows.
We've been having this conversation for the past 10 years. People have been talking about everything is going to the cloud. It's The cloud is great for scaling up and down if you don't have a consistent need. I was talking to someone at a networking event last night about this. If you need a $250,000 server for your AI tool, but you don't actually have a $250,000, you can just rent an H100 instance on the cloud for, I don't know, 10 minutes. It costs you whatever it costs you. It's not a $250,000. But if you need something that's more secure, like what the guy said, the cloud is not typically secure. There are secure versions and instances, but they cost more because you don't typically know where the actual server is that's doing your processing. It could be, in the States. It could be in Germany or
China.
Pakistan. And then the secure cloud costs so much more. They're also limited by your network. So trying to upload data. If you're out in the middle of nowhere and you have trash internet, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
Or if your network goes down, call Spectrum or whatever your provider is. Versus if you literally have a box under your desk, it's right there. And then if you, well, we already talked about that. Yeah.
I'm sorry. So are you seeing an increase or growth in any reality capture adoption in certain industries, manufacturing, entertainment, surveying? Are you starting to increase more sales into any certain area?
We started working in forensic analysis in 2023, having never done that before. Started working with an owner of a company in May of that year, and built him a couple computers for back to the reconstruction, which is super cool. Sad, but cool. And he just kept hiring more people and buying more computers from us, and that was fun. It's fun. Then we keep building more systems for civil engineering, construction, and surveying. So it's fun to see the new, more people trying to get into it. I'm in a couple of book groups on Facebook, and just all the questions that people have, I'm like, wow, it's still, people have no idea.
Yeah, it's. I mean, reality capture in general is still mystifies a lot of people.
Yeah.
Is there any certain challenging jobs that you've been able to help out with, or projects that where upgrading a computer really came in clutch?
Yeah, we worked with a large power company, energy provider, for about 2 years. And they had a bunch of different needs. There was their first computer from us was like 40 grand, and they had a terabyte of RAM, and they were using it for like 6 months, and it was doing fine, and then it wasn't fine. They were expecting at some point there was just a massive point cloud, and they were expecting it to take 10 hours to render or process whatever, and it took 64 hours. So significantly longer because they ran out of RAM. They had a terabyte of RAM and they ran out of RAM. Insane. So they bought another terabyte of RAM, which for them was not a large amount of money. And it brought it from 64 hours to 15.
Wow.
So not perfect, but pretty dang, a lot faster.
Yeah.
And they had some wacky builds over 2 years.
Nice. Well, I think that's all the questions I have for you. The key takeaway for me, at least, was not prioritizing. I've always prioritized the GPU, so that's interesting. I got to reevaluate approaching it. Do you have any other advice for people looking to upgrade their computer, or I mean, besides going to Top Flight and getting one? But
other than calling us, I would say do your research. Don't just go to Best Buy. We're not for everyone, for one reason or another. If you're outside the States, can't help you, or at least I can't sell you the computer. I'm happy to to sell you some stuff. I'm all about trying to help people out. But just don't go buy the cheapest thing because you're gonna hate it. I promise you.
all right, well, that's a good stopping point, I believe. We'll give it a few more seconds to see if there's any last second questions. But other than that, thank you for your time. You want to plug any of your socials or your website or anything?
Yeah. So the website is toplightpc.com, and then we are pretty active on LinkedIn. We're on Facebook and Instagram as well. Just Top Light Computers. Yeah.
All right. So Top Flight Computers on all socials, and then topflightpc.com.
Yep.
Nice. Go check them out, everybody. They make amazing computers, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Chris. He's always been there to answer my questions. So, all right. Thanks, everybody.